are transitioning to our next panel, CRO Roundtable, hosted by Matt Darrow, the CEO and co-founder of Vivin. Welcome to the show, Matt. How are you doing?
Well, thanks, Julia. Thanks for having me to host the panel and our guests here. How's my audio doing as we close day two for you? Can you hear me loud and clear?
Excellent.
All right, fantastic. I see our panel coming in. I've got Trevor, Allison, Steve. All right, I think we're just waiting on Vinesh here, just so he didn't bombard in the last session, and then we'll get going.
Yeah, let's do a quick round of introductions. Allison, let's start with you.
Well, yeah, Julia. So for the audience out there, just for the context of today's panels, you mentioned, so Matt Darrow here, co-founder, CEO of Vivin. I'll be leading the discussion today, and our discussion's topic is CRO strategy in the agentic era. So we've got this incredible lineup of speakers today who are going to share real-world examples of AI creating real-world results for sales teams. So my goal is to make this the audience most favorite session of your summit, Julia. We've got a tall order at our hand, but we're going to be discussing this topic in a variety of ways. We're going to do some Q&A. We're going to do part debate. It's all going to be meaningful insights. And that's enough of me because the whole panel is here. So let's kick off with some of the introductions you mentioned. And Allison, we'll actually start with you. If you want to just talk a little bit about yourself and the company that you're currently at.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Allison Grieb. I'm the Chief Sales Officer at Paystand. Paystand is a really unique and disruptive AR automation and payments company. We are helping companies reduce fees to transact by the complacency that people have around all the fees that it costs to move money around. And we're doing it in a really unique way. Our feeless platform is built on the blockchain. So we have a nice crypto flair here at Paystand, and we're sort of set up for a really exciting future as stable coins and Bitcoin and cryptocurrency become more and more prominent in the future.
Thanks for joining us, Allison. And I love about your team too, not only some of the size and scope, but the scale and the broadness of the team that you run as well. And honestly, the sales leader community is rather small when it comes to tech. And when I turn it over to Trevor for an introduction, actually, Trevor, you and Allison crossed paths back in the day too.
We did. We did. We ate some of the same dirt or cashed some of the same RSUs together, and times passed. So nice to meet everyone. Trevor Jett, CRO here at Vivin. So I work with Matt today. I worked with Allison at Anaplan in the past. So it is a small community. Vivin is an AI sales teammate that helps our customers in the mid part of the sales cycle provide always-on expert capability to our sales reps, to our SEs, and to our CSMs. And pleasure to be here today.
Thanks, Trevor. And just like you and Allison kind of go way back, I'm going to turn over to Vinesh, who I've had the good pleasure of actually working with about 15 years ago. And since that time, Vinesh has gone on to lead some pretty incredible sales organizations. Welcome, Vinesh. A little background about yourself.
Thanks, Matt. Glad to be here. So my name is Vinesh Vis, Chief Revenue Officer at Smarsh. I've been in a variety of revenue and sales leadership roles over the last 20 years. And you're making me feel old, Matt, saying 15 years ago, but it's been a great ride. So Smarsh is a leader when it comes to communications, data, and intelligence. And so we work with about 6,500 customers across the globe. We capture, we archive, and surveil that data for a variety of customers in regulated industries predominantly. Agentic AI is very near and dear to our hearts. In fact, we just introduced our first intelligent agent, if you go out and read about Smarsh, with a lot more to come. So material ROI for our customers in the world of Agentic AI. And we're hiring. Hopefully, we'll have a chance to continue to grow going in next year. So pleasure to be here. Thanks again, Matt.
Fantastic. Thanks, Vinesh. And next up, actually, Francis, I'd love for you to introduce yourself. You've got a fascinating background as well, where you're actually one of the panelists that has held both a role in sort of being a founder and a product leader as well as a sales leader. But tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here. So as the founder of Mad Kudu, started as a sales leader. And then when we started getting reps that were closing consistently and hitting quota, I transitioned to a CPO role, running the product and engineering team. Mad Kudu was a tool that was intended to bring all of the data to the fingertips of the reps to make it easy for them to not have to navigate across 17 different tabs whenever they're trying to book a meeting or talk to someone. And since then, joined HG Insights, where I'm running the AI strategy, and it's all about how do we bring go-to-market to the agentic future. So very excited for the conversation today.
Thank you, Francis. Okay, Steve, bring us home. Well, we've got 4 panelists that are sort of in seat in the function. It's a function that you've held multiple times, but then also you've got this amazing purview that I was really excited to bring to the panel today too. So over to you, Steve.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Steve D'Angelo, partner with BCG. Boston Consulting Group, as you probably know, is a global strategy consulting company, 12, 15 billion in annual revenue. My focus at BCG is in our next gen sales organization. So what we do is we go into companies that are typically half a billion and above, and we go and do sales transformation work with them, where we look at all go-to-market framework items like sales execution, sales process, how should you use technology, how do you be doing pricing, what's your hiring model like? So sales organizations that look to transform, that's what we go do in advisory work. Prior to BCG, as Matt said, I was in the tech space for 35 years. I've been a chief revenue officer several times, building high performance global sales teams, been president of a publicly traded company, CEO of a mid-stage company. So my background is really as an operator. So I bring that operating experience to these consulting engagements that we do here at BCG. So look forward to the conversation here and giving you some of the insights that I see multiple companies engaging in as it pertains to AI.
Fantastic, Steve. So Julia, I said at the beginning, our goal is to make this the top session for HSC, especially on day 2. I think we're off to a good start with the panel that we've assembled for the topic of CRO strategy, this agentic era. So let's get into it. The audience now knows sort of a little bit of who's who here that's going to be speaking. So let's start with the number one thing on the mind of nearly every sales leader that I get to speak with, but also the audience, which is, where have you guys seen actual success rolling and leveraging AI across your teams? Allison, I'd like to turn it over to you to kick us off here, because you've done some incredible things on the sales development side, but maybe you can start us off there.
Yeah, so in my role, I have responsibility for all of the account executives, the SDRs, the channel team, and the revenue operations function. And, of course, in my seat, not everything's always working super well at once. That would be too much to ask. But our SDR team, they were doing really well. We had a team of about 20 people, and they were cranking. So we were making over 150 dials a day, and just not getting the results. It was really a struggle for them to start booking meetings. And so we really had to sort of stop and think differently, right? Think differently. And I think some of us who have been in the seat doing this a long time, sort of, we know what has worked well in the past. And that's something that's been a real challenge for this new evolution, this new AI. Like, how do we think differently and really challenge what worked historically to think differently? So we went out and did some investigations, some trials with various SDR AI capability, whether we're doing an agent or other things. But what we really focused on was leveraging a couple of different solutions. We leveraged Clay.ai to be able to clean our database. We use HubSpot, so we were able to clean our database and actually enrich it using Clay.ai, meaning we could surface up better lists that were enriched with ICP information, better contact information, and give a better opportunity to the people actually making those dials that they were calling someone that was going to be a good fit for what we do here at Paystand. The other thing we did is we decided to reduce the force of our SDRs. So we took it down to about 25% of the original size, and we leveraged a solution called Artisan. And what Artisan does is it goes out and actually warms up your contacts, warms up leads for you. And we were doing Artisan sort of in a vacuum for a while. And we were seeing some traction. It takes a little while to kind of get things up and running. But what we saw, a real success factor, was having Artisan do some of the legwork ahead of time, and then putting in our sequences where our remaining fewer SDRs were calling in after they had been touched by Artisan. and we were getting twice the results where we were with the bigger team, with a much smaller team leveraging AI. So that's been a really impactful opportunity for us, where we've been able to truly see results. But it's not all AI, right? So we're still needing that human touch to convert those opportunities, but we're doing a lot of legwork ahead of time to make sure we're surfacing the right opportunities to our SDRs.
Awesome. And thanks for sharing that really great sort of top of funnel use case using two established vendors in the market to actually give you those real results. Francis, I'd love to turn it over to you as well, because while Allison sort of teed up some vendors that are helping drive results at the top of the funnel, you've actually, especially with your product background as well, you've actually built some tools that are materially helping the sales organizations that you work with. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, and I've struggled with a lot of the off-the-shelf tools out there for various reasons. But one of the things that was interesting to me is that when I started interacting with ChatGPT, I realized that the UX and the way we interact with the product was actually the biggest change more than anything. And so I started thinking, like, what are some of the internal processes that are broken that we could fix with this new user experience? And one of the big things is, QBRs, like quarterly retros that you run with the sales team. You're trying to figure out what went well, what didn't, like where did we lack enablement, all that kind of stuff. Those meetings are absolutely horrible. Generally, you have a team of like 20 reps, like half of them are doing something else, like very few are listening, and the few that are listening just like take over the conversation, and it's a monologue for like 10 minutes and everybody's rolling their eyes. And so the idea was, say, well, why don't we extract into a prompt what is the information we're trying to get, like what worked well, what didn't, like why did we struggle at this particular point in the funnel. So essentially like running some analysis ahead of time to figure out how our funnel conversion was going, highlight the points where we wanted to dig a little bit deeper, and then give each rep the individual prompt and tell them, have a one-on-one session with ChatGPT in the advanced voice mode so that you're just talking to the computer. And then at the end, run this other prompt, which will basically like get a full transcript and summary and send it back to me, and I'll summarize the retro. And the beauty of this was that we got much more detailed insights as to what was working and what wasn't. And the feedback from the reps was pretty unanimous that the experience was just radically different. They felt like it was a safe space where they could share the things that weren't working, the things that were working. Like the sycophancy of the AI tools actually was a positive, because like every time you say something, ChatGPT is like, oh my God, that is so brilliant. You're a genius. Like, tell me more. And that actually like served a really good purpose for the sake of getting the reps to talk more and to share more. And so the level of insight, the spread of insight across the entire team that we got was pretty extraordinary. And I would say like that's one of the core use cases internally that we've built, and like changing the user experience of some of these, I guess, like context heavy meetings.
Yep. I've seen so much, even working with account executives too, Francis, that having those different modalities really unlocks engagements from the sales rep community at large, where like typing text isn't sort of the reaction that a lot of folks normally need to go to. I think it's an amazing tool that you use just by using voice to drive this.
And let's be honest, like salespeople are good at talking.
I know we're off to a good start here too. Trevor, drop us down further in the funnel. What about yourself?
Yeah, great. Yeah, we also have experienced sort of the top of funnel. There's a lot of tools that do that. With drinking our own champagne in the middle of the funnel, I think was where we saw the most profound changes. Someone that Alice and I both used to work with years ago used to say, if you're selling something, it should increase revenue, decrease cost, or make a material change in the way that you operate. And so when I look at a lot of these tools and trying to figure out like really where the value is, including our own, it's in that determination. Like, is it changing the way that you do business? So in the middle of the funnel, like what we've seen is that we are able to do a lot less work by having an agent come in, our agent come in and do a lot of that work for us. So things like live call assist, where we've got always on expertise. We can save a lot of cycles, having to go back and get things answered later. We can answer them in real time. Deliverables to the customer, whether that's a value study, a value case that gets generated. You don't have to wait a week. You don't have to have a head do that. We can do that like with an agent, and it's frankly better. And even internally, as we we do things that we need to do in the sales cycle from a leadership perspective, whether you follow Spiced or MedPick, building those things out instead of having a rep do it at one point in time. This can be automated and can be better because it's not your rep telling you something. It's a disinterested, objective third party that's actually making those determinations. And what we end up doing is just a lot less time in tools. We don't go into Salesforce anymore. We don't watch gong calls anymore. One of the last firms that I was with, we actually measured and put a leaderboard on for like the number of hours that everyone spent watching gong calls. And for clarity, the larger the number, the better. And now I look at that as being just positively ridiculous. Like if I had a rep of mine or an SE that was spending 5 or 10 hours a week watching gong calls, like I think I would be furious about that. Like now we don't need to go do that. All of those things are done for us in the middle of the sales cycle. We can save all of those minutes and put them towards calling customers and selling deals.
Fantastic. Yeah, and changing those sort of normal standard operating practices. Spot on, Trevor. So those are very specific. Steve, take us wide. How about yourself? Right, you've got this purview of all these different companies that you work with. What are you seeing across a broad spectrum?
I'm seeing, I'd say three core areas. One has to do with talent. One of the biggest challenges sales organizations have had for many, many years and continue to have is, do I have the right talent and am I enabling my talent? In days gone by, if someone didn't make a number one quarter, the next quarter, you're pushing them out. These days, through the advent of AI, we're able to identify through data modeling what are the behavioral attributes, behavioral traits, and skills that are required to be a top performer for a specific sales organization. And by modeling those top performers and then modeling those that are not performing at the highest level, we're able to identify where the very specific enablement has to take place. So we're seeing more and more companies using large language models, using AI to enhance their talent, enable their talent. The second area is in the RFP responses. We're seeing a ton of this where, RFPs have always been a very difficult thing from a time perspective, making sure you're answering them correctly. The very simple process of uploading an RFP that you got from a prospective client into your large language model and having that AI create the response. It is amazing how accurate the responses are, how kind of informative the responses are. So we're seeing companies cut 80-90% time off of what it takes to respond to an RFP. And then the final area is real-time coaching. And this is more for inside sales. So I'm inside sales. I've got a Zoom call going on. The AI engine is listening, it's transcribing, but most important, there's a section on the screen where it's providing the salesperson advice as to, you should be going down this path. The prospect said this, position this value proposition. And it does take a little bit of time for the rep to kind of be able to maneuver this, having a live conversation, getting the coaching there digitally, utilizing that information. But those are the three areas, and they're having really a dramatic positive impact on some of performance.
That's in Vinesh, I know that when you and I were prepping a little bit beforehand, RFP was one of yours as well. But bring us home. What are some of the other areas as well that you're starting to see results?
Yeah, I can only imagine, Matt, when you were my sales engineer 15 years ago, if you had RFPs that could be automated with Agentic AI, how that would be. So you'd be playing a lot more golf if we went back in the day. So very similar to what Steve was talking about. Yeah, we use a tool called Responsive, formerly RFP.io, to help with our RFP automation. It's a fantastic tool and it's a fantastic use case for us. That's definitely number one. Number two would be, so when we think about just general research on our accounts, our reps have started playing around with Perplexity, ChatGPT, Gemini, you name it. And so that we're still in the infancy stages, I would call it, of exploring which tools are going to be best and how do we programatize it. The third, and just for context, so a big part of what I cover and what we do is in the enterprise business unit is large deals, large customers, longer sales cycles. And so that's why RFPs and research play a big part. But the third piece is we recently launched in partnership with our SFA provider, our CRM provider, Salesforce.com, an AI agent specifically for customer support called Archie. And it's working really well for us. And because in our case, we've made 15 acquisitions over 12 years, we cross-sell and upsell into our existing install base a lot. And so being able to provide the right customer support experience only increases our velocity, being able to upsell and cross-sell in the future. So it's just as you think about kind of one mind and one company across any organization the audience is working with, the benefit to sales and the benefits to go to market can come from a variety of different ways across the organization as well.
That's awesome, Manish. Julie, it's kind of funny having being on this panel with you because I remember like maybe 6 to 9 months ago, you and I were doing another one of these, and it was so nascent, the use cases for sales. There was so much just around doing basic research or email writing, and now we've heard everything from sales coaching, RFP response generation, completely changing the way that people are doing top of funnel, mid funnel use cases. These are all fantastic examples, and I'm glad you guys all shared them because it's not theory. Everybody's moved beyond maybe we should do it, and you guys are all doing it in practice at some of the largest organizations on the planet as well. So I want to take us to like what's next. So let's stick with you, Vinesh, since you closed us out in the last one. But what are the areas that you guys are looking forward to, sort of leveraging AI for the next series of maybe use cases or investments?
Yeah, for sure. So Matt and others kind of talked about the fact that there is an ability to kind of get ahead when it comes to writing emails and outbounding and such as well too. When we think about using a Perplexity or ChatGPT to go do some initial research, how that translates into a broader account plan is where I think I see this going really well, especially for folks that cover enterprise accounts. Going through and creating a truly robust account plan can take a lot of human hours. And so doing more of that through AI, I think is going to make people a lot more efficient, and it's going to give sales reps an ability to get faster ramp time, faster time to productivity as well too. Another area that I see and what we've already started to kind of think about is operational insights. And so we all operate with the sales operations, revenue operations team that is giving us insights. We might be using, more modern tools that give us insights as well, but it still requires a human to go and extract what insights you want to make decisions. And so I think the world that we're going to all see moving towards is being able to say, how can an agent help me to make decisions when I don't even know that I need to make decisions? So it's leading me one step ahead versus me pulling it along type thing. And the same, I think, is going to apply down at the sales rep level as well, too. When you think about next best action for a sales rep in any of their prospecting or any of their deal cycles, if you have an agent as a virtual teammate that's telling you what to do next, think about how powerful that can be. It's going to compress sales cycles, lower the customer acquisition cost, and everybody benefits in that world. Second kind of bucket I'd see is even beyond just sales, and you think about our partnerships with marketing and just the website and how we actually engage with our customers and prospects on the front end. We're moving from a world where search engine optimization was key to now all of a sudden a world where it's really about the generative AI channels where people are doing their research. So we're going from, hey, how pretty is my website to be able to actually engage a client to, okay, how logical and productive are the answers that are coming from these generative AI channels when somebody's doing a search. So just the basic text and output that's coming from a chat GPT, et cetera, is going to be what leads somebody to whether or not they want to engage with you as a vendor. So thinking with that mindset first, especially as you're growing bottoms up for companies that are just getting started, is going to be very, very important. The other area I would look at is as you think about the overall sales process that you might engage with, how a customer expects to engage with a sales rep and a vendor, I think is going to evolve very, very quickly. And what I mean by that is we all know that customers don't want to talk to a sales rep unless they have to. And more importantly, they're going to want to talk to an agent if that's a better option. So especially when a rep is either unavailable or maybe doesn't always have the answer right at their fingertips, the more that we can train an agent to answer questions, whether it's on behalf of a sales engineer, product, professional services. Think about even the sheer contracting process. If a customer has a question about pricing or certain terms and conditions, being able to ask an agent those questions saves time for the customer, saves time for the rep. Everybody makes money that way. And so it's much more efficiency. And I think where we're going to go, the last piece I'll kind of close with here, Matt and team, is I think we all need to be prepared that in 12 to 18 months, if not less, anytime we're hiring for top talent, back to what even Steve was talking about as well too, account executives are going to ask and expect for you as a vendor, hey, what investments are you making in go-to-market AI to make me more productive as a seller? If we don't have a good answer there, if we don't have a path for a seller there, that's on us right now to be able to start making those changes. So getting in front of it right now for the next 12 to 18 months is going to be key.
Thanks, Vinesh. And you're already stepping 3 clicks into the future with some of this different ways that buyers are going to engage. I think, Steve, I want to turn over to you because you have a name for this. I think you called it conversational AI maybe when we were chatting, but maybe you want to hit a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it's in alignment with Vinesh just talked about. So we are seeing and helping deploy in several instances this concept of conversational AI. And to what Vinesh just mentioned, prospects don't want to talk to salespeople until they're ready. The statistics have changed over the years. It was, well, prospects go through 30% of their buy process, then 50% of their buy process. We're seeing 60, 65% of the time that the prospect is going through their buy process, which means you have to deploy some kind of technology to educate them. They want self-service. They want conversational AI. And what we're doing and what we're seeing a lot of is allowing a prospect to engage with your digital agent to ask questions, have a dialogue. It's almost as though a real person is having that dialogue. As a matter of fact, before this panel, I just had a conversation with a company that's deploying some technology for one of our clients. It's Synchrony is the name of the company. They have a AI agent that does full discovery, need assessment, full discovery. And depending on the question or answer that they get, that agent is smart enough to now go ask another kinds of question to assess hot buttons, assess needs, assess requirements. And then what's happening, of course, in the background, all this data is being gathered and synchronized so that when the prospect does raise their hand and Steve D'Angelo, the rep, is now going to go speak to Matt, the prospect, I am furnished with all of this information about the dialogue that took place. What are the needs? What are the areas you're focusing in on, et cetera? It's even now getting to a point where the first demos, where SEs are typically dragged into do these first, sometimes unqualified demos, conversational AI is able to do those demos. So while it's early in that area, we're starting to see it move pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think just from my chair as a technology builder, being able to layer some of these new advancements into our own services, the tech is moving fast. But the other thing too, Steve, is like culturally, companies are also moving quickly to saying this is a real mode of operation that's going to be a big deal. And that's actually kind of what I wanted to go next, because we're all talking about AI being poised to do so much more than just help book a meeting or help do outbound. And as AI becomes so much more capable to do more and more of the real work, that's going to kind of radically start to reshape and change the sales organization, including potentially introducing new roles, changing the size and scope of existing roles. Allison, I'd love to throw it over to you, because when it comes to new roles, that's something that I think you guys are experimenting with in a big way.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Matt. So we were at an offsite maybe 6 months ago, and leadership, we were all saying we need to do more AI. What are we more AI? And everyone just kind of looked around at each other and said, "Well, I'm using ChatGPT, and it just isn't cutting it, right?" So I think the hardest thing is, as an executive, as a leader, to be intentional about carving time to investigate, research, test. And it's not something that, people who are doing their day jobs have an opportunity to do. So we've introduced the concept of a go-to-market engineer, right? And these go-to-market engineers actually live in each of the organization. So I've got someone in go-to-market that is going to sit with me, that's going to be my AI guru, right? Who has a dotted line to our head of engineering, and is going to make sure that the work that we're doing inside of go-to-market aligns with what's happening in customer operations and payment processing and in support, and that we're not doing duplicative. Because I think all of us that have been at early stage companies have seen companies go out and buy 25 technologies, and then all of a sudden you have all these silos of information, of business, and nothing talks to each other. So this is our way of getting really far ahead of this, and also being really intentional about, we want to do more, but we need the right people with the right mindset to go and look for these. And those are engineers. They're not necessarily, my sales ops leader that drives a forecast is not necessarily the right person. That's the customer, right? Mm-hmm. So we're really being intentional about these go-to-market engineers and putting them across the organization, so that we can find new paths, because there's still a lot of AI fluff out there. I think everybody says AI and go to market now, but what's real? And even with some of the products and companies that we're working with, my sales, my SDR leader is on the phone with the artisan CTO all the time, right? Here's our feedback. Here's what's working well. And there's a good collaboration, but that takes time and energy too. But because we want to be on the forefront of AI and we want to rewrite, what sales and go-to-market looks like leveraging AI, we want to be intentional about it.
Well, and I think your point about partnering with a vendor like Clay has helped you guys achieve results, and obviously they've been a big champion for this new role. It's like the hottest new role in GTM at the time too. Allison, maybe second click for you would be, how do you think about holding these folks maybe accountable, responsible, the projects that they do? So if anybody else that's listening in the audience, you sort of wanted to bring this role on, how do they maybe give them the right levels of responsibility so they're actually driving impact?
Well, I think all of us, no matter how much AI we have, we're still all in charge of revenue. So revenue is still king, right? So it's making sure that we design measurable metrics for each solution that we're driving, right? So we can say we're, leveraging something, but if it's not actually driving results. So for example, with Clay, I had a list of 5,000 customers or target accounts that had been sitting in my database for 7 months, right? We put Clay on it and we were able to clean and enrich that in a week. And so now those have been activated and we're now calling and leveraging those solutions or those contacts and actually being able to go faster. So it's really being, so for the go-to-market engineer, we will have various projects that will have various KPIs and metrics, but all with revenue, all with all of the metrics that ladder up to revenue.
It's awesome. Thanks, Allison. Now, Steve, just from the clients that you're working with, so Allison's talking about new role coming into the sales organization. How about the existing sales organizations at large, with the companies that you're working and consulting across? What are you guys expecting to happen?
Yeah, and I'll answer it in a second. I think one of the things Allison said was important about, CROs, we're still responsible for revenue. I will share with all the CROs just about every client that I'm involved in at the executive level, CEO, board level. They are looking to reduce sales operating costs. They certainly want to drive revenue, but they want to reduce sales operating costs. It's a constant focus. And the way that AI is impacting that is sales organization, sales team size will definitely shrink. As you talk about conversational AI that I just shared, and you think about prospects engaging with digital agents early in the sales cycle, maybe through 60% of their buy process, we don't need as many SDRs. We don't need as many solution engineers. And I know this is a controversial topic, but the reality is AI will allow us to shrink our sales organization. We will operate much more efficiently. We'll have a much lower operational cost, but yet it won't reduce the focus on revenue generation, of course. But that's how I see it's changing. There will be a reduction in size.
Yeah.
And Steve, I just want to add to that. I feel like we've all been trained over the last 4 or 5 years, in this profitability, right? And it used to be growth at all costs, right? And then it became, well, no, you got to run the business with profitability in mind. And so I think some of us are used to more juggling that. And so it's been good training wheels for what you're talking about to come, but it is going to be, an efficiency play and how do I get more out of each resource?
Yeah. That's been a big fundamental mantra of AI in general, is that disruption of what the workforce is doing. I actually want to come back to this because I think this topic, we can probably take 2 or 3 clicks deeper, just talk about operational formulas and how people plan for that. So I'm going to double back on this. But first, Francis, what about the humans, man? You and I were talking about it, right? You've got there's still a place for that, and maybe you want to if you could address for us a little bit about, like, where do the humans still fit? How is it still a differentiator? Will it be a differentiator? I'd love to hear your take on that.
Yeah, I think the way I see it is very similar to what happened when we got mass email and like email automation. I think the efficiency boost that we're getting today from AI is just it's a, we're going to look back at this and it's going to be a blip in history, right? It's good that people should be using it today, but I think sales leaders need to have very deep conversations with their CEOs, their CTOs as to what's next, right? The same way that it's always easy to predict like first order changes when there's a big transformation. I think when we invented like the gas engine for cars, it was easy to predict that they were going to be gas stations everywhere in the US. What was harder to predict was the Walmart model. We were going to design and architect our cities around use of the car, and that would allow a business model of a corner store that was built outside of a city, massive surface, lower cost, and like driving people there. And I think no one is denying that today you should use AI and some automation to do your outbound. I think the true question is what happens a year from now when every single one of your competitors is using Artisan or Piper or whatever like introduced name of new AI SDR coming out there? Like, then how does your sales team differentiate from them? And I think that is a very, very important question that companies need to be asking themselves, because the short-term gain that we're getting from AI SDRs and like AI in the sales process is undeniable and something that we should be jumping on. But thinking about what's next is critical and actually, I would say, existential. And I think that's where the human connection and reps actually building, nurturing relationships with the deals that they're closing, it's what it's going to allow them to then in the future say, hey, I'm working on this deal with company A, would you be willing, former or customer, to be a reference to these people? Because AI slop is real. Everybody can generate fake videos, fake testimonials, fake images. The only way buyers are going to trust something is real and delivers the results that your reps are going to suggest they do is by talking to someone who's actually using it. And the only way that happens is if that customer still has a relationship with the AE that closed them and is willing to take a reference call. And I think the value of that, network from a sales perspective and the Rolodex, if you will, is going to make a gigantic comeback. And I worry a little bit that our current batch of reps that are very, very comfortable in the digital world, like I go to these conferences and I can tell the A's are not comfortable as much in like in-person conferences like it used to be, and they're like more comfortable behind a Zoom meeting with like a cute little background. That to me, I think, is like scary and should be scary for all leaders, because at least my opinion, it's one person's opinion, but the big differentiating factor that you can bring into your team is that human connection and driving word of mouth and brand through references. And that's something that cannot be cheated through with AI. Everything else can be and will be easier to do in the next 12 months.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. There's a big point of the just the feeling, and I often think about, I talk to my team about, like, if you have two equally qualified candidates that can do the exact same skill set, well, who do you bring into your organization? It's the one that has the best culture fit. So I think that there's a lot that still hasn't been talked about on the AI front when we get into humans interacting with AI services, especially in sales, where personality and culture is going to be an incredibly important dynamic too, as a differentiation mode for so many clients as well. That's what's going to give you difference of feeling. Just to double back too, I see we got some audience questions, so we'll hit those as well. So thanks for engaging, crowd. If you throw those up there, we'll get to them. But I did want to talk about, if the teams get smaller, humans still remain important. Francis, I'm with you. How does the planning change? I think so many folks that might be listening to this and the panelists here, for over the last 20 years, everybody has sort of the same spreadsheet from their CFO around, we're going to grow this much, so therefore we need this many heads and this much quota and this much undersign and this much ramp time. Vinesh, I want to throw it over to you first around, how do you think about if AE productivity starts to change, how does your planning cycle change?
Yeah, for sure. So I would agree with what Francis is talking about first, but as far as the human relationships will differentiate, I think it's so key. And as you think about just the overall productivity model, to what Allison was talking about as well too, I've been always in a private equity backed software company. That's the DNA that I've grown up with. But you're seeing a lot of folks that are in venture capital backed companies that are looking for that combination of growth and profitability as well too. I think agentic AI is going to be a key piece of how that gets done. So normally somebody might take at the start of a year, okay, I've got an Excel spreadsheet and I'm going to build up a capacity plan of how many account executives, how many sales engineers, et cetera, do I need, and what productivity can I get out of each of those individuals? And when we start to think about where the efficiency gains are through each stage of the sales process, to my earlier point as well too, well, we can start to create more productivity out of that same seller. and get a higher capacity, which is a higher quota as a result of it as well too. Well, for reps, I mean, the ones that really do start to shine when it comes to human relationships, if they had an agent that could take care of more of the administrative type of tasks, engaging with the customer for more tactical type use cases, then that's going to allow them to do more with less. It allows them to cover more accounts, generate more demands. It improves their forecast accuracy as well too, because agents will be able to kind of feed that data into a more cohesive experience. And so as we look at that from an investor standpoint as well too, all of a sudden now, in the private equity world, what traditionally was the rule of 30 or the rule of 40 starts to go up to a rule of 70, rule of 80, because you can actually drive that much more growth and profitability with agents and just overall agentic AI stretching across go-to-market, but all facets of the business as well too.
Mm-hmm. So, and Steve, some of this put in practice. So, in Vanesh's point, if everybody's getting more productive, quotas are going up. In the wild, am I just expected to sell more with my same comp plan, or how is that starting to change for leaders as well?
So since there are these efficiencies by using AI, sales organization shrinking, believe it or not, and this is going to be music to everybody's ears, CFOs that I work with are saying we can afford to actually enrich our comp plan because we are more efficient. We are reducing some of our overall sales operational costs. We want to keep our star players because we've invested so much in sales enablement. We don't want them leaving. We could now start to tweak our comp plans and start pay them more aggressively for the top performers. So we tend to look at technology that it tends to kind of hurt, reducing sales size, sales team size. Am I going to be as important? Here's an example where for those that are performing, they're going to start to experience more aggressive comp plans, being paid more because, again, sales operation cost allows it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and Steve, at the top of the session too, you talked about some real life use cases around like coaching, hiring profile, everything else, where normally an enterprise might have a 0, 25, 50, 100% sort of a ramp tier over the coming quarters. I think, can you talk a little bit about, is that materially changing on how you're doing the operational planning for your clients, where to Vanesh's point, like the new formula has maybe these differences of higher quotas, different territories, faster time to ramps, but what's actually being put into practice?
Yeah. So the focus on the ICP in the territory environment, we're finding that they are starting to allow territories to shrink, but still getting a lot more yield out of those territories because they're getting a lot more sales activity than just a rep engaging. The fact that they're using conversational AI in order to nurture opportunities, we're starting to see organizations adjust how they're planning out their territories. Still getting a little bit shrinkage, but you're getting a whole lot more yield out of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, this is to your guys' point too, is like it is great for the business with operational efficiency. That was your CFO CEO discussion. But then for the rep, it's not great. My comp plan didn't change, but my expectations went up in a much bigger way.
Right.
And for most folks here, running the whole revenue org, it is very broad. Allison, you mentioned you have channel, you have SDR, right? You guys probably have SEs and you have CSMs too. Trevor, nobody's spoken about the ratio yet. This is another cost of sale, AEs and SEs. I want to call on you actually because way back in your day, you were an SE at a prior life before you moved into the wild world of sales and sales leadership. How's that ratio going to change as well as AI can do more?
And it was way back. Our first product was Fire. That's how long ago it was. Yeah, I remember back in those days, like someone told me that the expected ramp time was going to be a year before I quote unquote would not stink up the room, and like that's an entirely different expectation today. I think a few things are in motion now, like the things that kept people from getting to critical mass in their roles as an SE, an AE, or whatever was access to expertise, because we went to formal training. We flew to formal training that we were ridiculous to do now. So those things happen a lot faster now than they ever did before. And so now we can ramp these things up a lot faster. The AE in the mix on the go-to-market team has access to expertise that they did not have access to before. And we typically think of that ratio as the AE to SE ratio. And so that number is going to change completely because now AEs can either do their own demo, or I think it was Steven that pointed out they're not even going to do the first demo. Like the first demo is going to happen agentically, and they're going to be that much further along in the process. But that access to expertise is going to change things both from an SE perspective and from an overlay perspective. And that's the thing that I don't think many people have contemplated. If you go back to my resume, I worked for some big blue companies that were known for backing up the school bus whenever we'd go to a meeting, because there was like anybody that knew anything about this thing would show up. And I'm wondering if we don't need the school bus anymore, because now we can go in and say, I'm going to be an expert enough on these things in these subject areas, in these verticals. I think that's going to change the ratios entirely. And back to Steven's point again, we're going to hire fewer people as a result.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, as these orgs change and all these new tools, new workflows get adopted, Francis, I actually want to tee it over to you. Also, just because of some of your interesting bent being on a product and engineering focus too, is what seems like science fiction starts to become a reality. But what do you still need to be maybe aware of from a data security perspective? So for the audience out there that's listening about, oh my God, like this future is here, it's arriving. I want to go and try these things, but there's new attack vectors that are opening up. So maybe what are some of the examples that you've seen that maybe you wouldn't have expected as AI rolls out more? And then what is the advice that you have for folks evaluating tools that they might seriously want to consider?
Yeah, I think this is something, again, that every sales leader, revenue leader needs to be discussing with their CIO, CISO, CTO. Like, what is our strategy around this? So I started with a very, very simple experiment. I updated my LinkedIn about section. At the very bottom of it, I added some reference to Nick Cage. And one of my employees did the same thing and said that he was the master of dad jokes. And then we look at how many dad jokes do we receive in the AI generated connect messages we get on LinkedIn. That's a kind attack, and it's a fun attack. The thing is, I've started building a prototype that's very different and a lot more scary, where if you start having AI agents that look at your calendar, I can send you an invite to your calendar. You don't need to accept it. In the description of that invite, I can inject a malicious prompt to make sure that when the AI agent is going to read it, it's going to set new instructions to send me all of the emails of people you're meeting with in the next months directly to my inbox. And the challenge here is that where in the past, when we were buying software from vendors, the software was deterministic. It had clear guardrails of like, it's supposed to do this way. It was easy to test it. With LLM powered systems, you're now entering a world where the system might work the way you expect it to 99% of the time, but anyone smart enough and understanding how the system works can actually jailbreak it, and the consequences can be disastrous. And this is where we go back into like, this is almost like brand killing type of error, right? If like, now imagine all of your reps all of a sudden are sending like insulting emails to their customers and prospects because someone figured out a way to inject a prompt into your outbounding system. That becomes really scary. And this is something that few of the vendors out there are talking about. Few of the CISOs have experience around, because all of this is very new. So again, like, I'm playing a bit of the card of the doomer and gloomer here, because like, this is my field of work. So I spend a lot of time in it. I'm very excited about the future, but I also want to balance a little bit of the reality here, right? Like, there's a lot of things that don't work the way people market them to work around these AI systems. Like, we call them reasoning models. Just to be very clear, all the research papers show that what you get in the reasoning model, ChatGPT, Claude, all that stuff, that is not their actual reasoning. This is the model pretending to reason so that you're convinced by the reasoning to believe the answer they gave you. That is literally how it is designed. The actual reasoning that's going on in the background is different. And we have like proof that that's the case. So it is very, very important that you think about what are the guardrails, what are the things that we put in place to make sure that, yes, we accelerate, we improve efficiency, but we stay away from catastrophic failure. And I think just those few examples I think are important to bear in mind, because you don't want to be the brand that becomes the canary in the coal mine.
Yep. Some of the new, even compliance audit certifications that are coming out as well are going to help with this. But to your point about making sure that there's a strong plan with the CIO, CISO that are going to evaluate these technologies, spot on, because the attacks are completely different. With 10 left, I do want to get to the fun debate topics, but before I do, Julia's been kindly enough posting some audience Q&A into the chat. We've got a couple ones that have had some plus ones on it, so I actually want to hit this for anybody that wants to take it. We've got a question around, hey, customer spend is potentially down, so should we expect to see these sales productivity gains with AI lowering the cost for customers to encourage them to spend? So therefore things get cheaper, so they'll potentially go and buy. Or are there any other different ways that AI is helping motivate customers to spend? Anybody feel strongly want to take that one?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. I'm sorry, Allison, if you want to go ahead first. Okay. So the trend of customer spend going down, I don't see that ending with a however. As we know in the SaaS space, it all comes down to that value proposition that you are delivering, right? That could get spend to kind of stabilize or even start to go up. However, I'd look at this a little bit differently. If we are shrinking our sales organization a little bit, if we're becoming more efficient by using conversational agents to move prospects through the cycle, sales reps will be closing more deals. And while spend goes down and the compensation plans, as I mentioned, are going to get more aggressive, it won't have as much of a negative impact on the reps. So they're going to close more deals. They're going to have a stronger comp plan. The time that they're engaged in a prospect is going to be less because the digital agent took that prospect through. The challenge of spend going down does not become as much of a challenge.
Go for it, Allison.
Yeah, so I'm really lucky here at Paystand because our solution doesn't have to have sort of value driven because we have a hard cost ROI. So but one of the things that's difficult is actually gathering the information from our prospects for all the inputs that we need from an ROI. So that's an area where I think, AI could help us go faster, where sometimes we're on a 2 to 3 week live. We're a velocity business, so our sales cycles are super fast. But being able to collect that information and get that information a lot faster, where we're justifying upfront the spend. And I think a lot of us in our careers have seen the role of a value engineer, right? Who has been creating sort of the value story and scope to help position, whether it's manual hours saved, whether it's hard cost dollars saved, like that role I can really see helping us get faster to a value, right? Because I think you're not going to have customers where spend is down, spending a lot of time if the value is not apparent up front. So I think this is an area where AI could really help us get to that value faster and create a stickier reason to move forward.
Thanks, guys. Other audience question before we lose them, because it's always good to make sure we're giving the people what they want here. Is anybody have use cases for competitive analysis? Anybody been dabbling in this for examples that maybe they want to share?
I can take that one. All right.
Good.
Sure. I mean, that's something that happens. I think the net is it happens a lot faster than it used to be. Like it used to be something that would go through a whole process, and then we build a battle card, and then the next quarter they'd send out the thing, and we'd know what to say. With Agentic AI specifically that rides along with you, like now that's built in immediately so that it just becomes part of the support that the agent gives the salesperson in the sales cycle as what they say, and they can vet it out, and that's where a lot of the enablement is happening today. So we can find it and then just very simply put it into the process. Now everybody's going to get it, and it'll be part of what everyone sees.
I feel like we could we could have used 2 hours, Julie, instead of just one, but I want to be mindful of the remaining time. And even though I really had my eyes set on getting a debate lined up here, we're going to run out of time for that. So I figured what I'd do is we'll do a closing circle in the last 5 minutes here to just go around the horn for everybody here to say, for the audience that's out there listening to all of this, we've covered a lot of ground from where sales teams are going, how they're changing, how comp plans are changing, how real life use cases are being applied. So after listening to all this, maybe everybody could just boil it down to the single piece of advice that you want to give a sales leader that's in the audience today. And Vinesh, I got you on my screen first, so we'll start with you.
Yeah, I'll try to hit both at the same time. So I think from a debate perspective, we're going to talk about the ideal stack, and also it kind of goes into the closing point, which is if you look back many years ago, somewhat of Trevor starting with Big Blue, I started with Big Red. There was the, hey, go buy Siebel and everything comes around it. Then you had Salesforce and all the ecosystem around it that kind of came about. I think we're entering a world now. This is unprecedented, where it's going to be really an agentic AI-based stack that kind of builds ground up. That is going to be very interesting to see how that influences vendors that we probably deal with today versus with the vendors we deal with tomorrow. But the one key thing I would give the audience is start with the end in mind. If you don't map out the customer journey and understand what are you trying to solve for, back to even what Allison was saying around know what metrics and ROI you're really trying to get out of leveraging any type of an agentic AI solution end to end, map out the process, then kind of back into the solutions that make sense, and hopefully it helps you drive your business forward.
Fantastic, Vinesh. Thank you. Allison, how about yourself? One thing for the audience.
Yeah, I be intentional, right? I think be intentional and prescriptive about how can we leverage AI to do better. I think I don't like to approach it from a cost cutting, head cutting. That's not my style, but how do I create efficiencies? How do I increase productivity? How do I serve up the right at bats for my AEs to knock down? And I think we talked a little bit, Matt, in our prep, but where traditionally I would be looking to double my sales force year over year. I don't know that I need to do that. I need to create efficiencies for the team that I've got and put them in a position to potentially take over the sales cycle in the middle of the cycle and knock it down. And their at bats are, they're starting their at bats with the bases loaded. So it gives everybody a chance to win faster. But I do believe that you have to be intentional. You have to take the time. You have to do the research because there still is fluff out there. And you've got to, talk to peers, right? And listen to things like this where people are actually doing it, because we want to crowdsource and share what's really working, because AI will become a competitive advantage.
Fantastic. Thanks, Allison. Steve, how about over to you?
Yeah, my suggestion is kind of just do it. I would say that we as sales leaders, we get caught up in the day-to-day, week-to-week, quarter-to-quarter, chasing deals, making sure we make our number. And while this is a very informative, fun, healthy conversation about technology, there is sometimes the situation where sales leaders don't focus as much on the efficiency technology and they just chasing opportunities. Again, make sure that you're focusing on it. Pick the right one that's gonna solve an important problem for you. Conversational AI is big. That would be my suggestion.
Awesome. Trevor, over to you.
Yeah, I think I would just zoom out a little bit for sales leaders that are of a certain age and say, believe it. Come down on the right side of history. Don't be Dan from the movie Wall Street, where he's like, oh, there's so many monitors and computers, I don't know what to do. Like, this is how it's going to be. And more importantly, like the next generation of sales reps, I forget who pointed out, like they aren't going to just benefit from it. They're going to expect it. Like if you don't have these things, they're not going to go to work for you because you're going to be this dinosaur of a company. So you got to stay up to date on these things, make it work, but don't just dismiss it like, oh, AI is like, it's not. This is how your life is going to be. This is how our organizations are going to be.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that was Vinesh's point around the reps being hired are going to be holding the leaders to task to make sure that they're going to be enabled the right way. Francis,
Exactly.
bring us home.
Maybe two things. I'll answer at least the question on spending. I think I would encourage sales leaders to think about OPEX and CAPEX in the sense that we're seeing like larger organizations like revisit some of the AI investments more as CAPEX. And if your product delivers like meaningful assets and they're accumulating knowledge that can be reused and like create a benefit like over time, I think it is something that a lot more CFOs are willing to hear. So I think even like from a go-to-market strategy, like using that to understand like the spend on like pure OPEX software might be going down, but overall, like we're seeing CapEx go up. So that's like one slight nuance on spend is down. I would debate that one a little bit, but then I'll just go with another contrarian take here a little bit is as a leader, I think it is absolutely critical that you change a little bit the way that you manage people in today's day and age with AI. Instead of just looking at the outcome, you need to look at the process. Today, it is way too easy to bamboozle everyone by putting a great looking output that comes straight out of ChatGPT. But if you don't coach your team through the process of like, how did they decompose the problem to smaller steps? How do they address every single one of the problems? You're going to have a team that's going to drift in quality over time. And when you realize it, it's going to be too late. So I think leaders really have to go into the how did you get to this and not just like what did you get. That's a big change that needs to happen. And you should not let your employees just like ship a bunch of ChatGPT AI slop.
Thanks, Francis. Julia, how do we do? Hour on the nose, killer panel.
What a
Let's have a seat
compelling
go.
session. Thank you so much for hosting, Matt, and thank you to all panelists. And a last question for you. What are you doing in the SLM land? I thought that would be your jam in particular.
On
Oh, this,
well,
Yeah, small language models, Matt.
Oh, for us, so
Yeah.
our take is a little different where we actually have our own reasoning model specifically for sales. So one of the things that Vivin's been focused on is that LLMs are really great for general purpose. What is the next best word that I think Francis mentioned will sort of dupe you into think it's reasoning, but it's really not. So if you're ever going to get the level of fidelity that you need for, as Steve mentioned, to have conversational AI actually talk to a client without being a liability, it needs vertical specific reasoning that will allow it to perform well in high stakes arenas. That's been our focus. That's a big part of our core IP at Vivin is we build reasoning models for sales that allow us to extend what LLMs are capable of doing that make this type of future possible.
Awesome. And how can our community support you best?
Supporting for us best would be two things. One, come to vivin.com and reach out to myself and Trevor. We'll be able to love to have a conversation and carry that forward. And the second thing is to just engage with us on LinkedIn. You can follow me. I'm always posting about these topics as well. So two simple takeaways.